Hi, I'm Professor McCoy, and this video isn't exactly going to be standard fare for this channel. What I ordinarily will do is I'll talk academically about a complex topic in philosophy. There'll be classroom discussions and lectures, and generally relatively serious philosophical topics. But this time, I'm joining in on a collaboration project that's been going on with a lot of YouTube channels, most of which are a lot bigger and more focused than mine, to do with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And this is a project called One Marvelous Scene. And the idea is before Endgame comes out and we wrap up this over 10-year-long phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a bunch of YouTubers are coming together and choosing a scene. And this can be your favorite scene, this can be what you think is the best scene, or it can just be an iconic scene from the Marvel Cinematic Universe up until now, to kind of look at how we got here to Endgame. So I want to say, before we go any further, this video will have no spoilers for Endgame. I am intentionally recording this video before Endgame is even released, just so I don't even accidentally include any spoilers. So if you haven't seen Endgame yet, or even if you have, feel free to enjoy this video without any worry about me spoiling anything to do with Endgame. However, there will be some major spoilers in this video, and probably for most of the other videos in this series, for the other MCU movies up until this point. For this video, if you haven't at least caught up to Infinity War, stop and watch those first, or you can continue if you don't particularly care about individual spoilers. But I will be talking about some individual plot points, so forewarning for that. So let's get into what I think is, while perhaps not the best scene, or my favorite scene, or even a scene from the best movie of the MCU, what I think is one of the most iconic scenes that set the tone for an important part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe up until at least Infinity War. And that comes from a perhaps unexpected place for a perhaps unexpected reason. Now, if you've seen another lecture of mine, which I'll put a link to in the description below, I gave a talk a while ago about this trend in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the example I brought up was a particular scene from the first Thor movie. And it's the scene where Thor confronts the Destroyer. And he does it in a very particular and very peculiar way, not the way one would expect from a hero based on Norse mythology, or even the kind of heroes that we're used to seeing in comic book movies, or even in a lot of comic book media in general. We see Thor confront the Destroyer, and I'm not going to include this whole clip because it's incredibly long and also for copyright reasons. But if you haven't seen this recently, I recommend going back and giving this a watch. We see Thor confront the Destroyer, this arch adversary commanded by his brother Loki. And all of his friends are expecting him to go toe-to-toe and defeat the Destroyer, something that none of them have been able to do. However, he doesn't. What he does instead is he allows himself to be defeated. He even allows himself, for all he knows, to be killed. And he does it so that his friends and those he cares about will be saved. This goes beyond the self-sacrificial hero archetype that we might be used to seeing that's so ingrained in our culture. And this goes to something even deeper. This goes to not merely the idea of self-sacrifice as being heroic, but the idea of victory through defeat. And we see this in a lot of our great modern myths. We see this, for example, a couple of examples that my own students have brought up on this, when I brought up this trend. We see this in Star Wars, in Return of the Jedi, when Luke refuses to fight Darth Vader and refuses to fight the Emperor. He allows himself to be defeated, and through that, he brings his father back to the light side. And he defeats the Emperor through being defeated. We see some parallels here with Thor's reconciliation with his father as well in this scene. So we also see this in Harry Potter, where he has to allow himself to be killed by Voldemort in order to ultimately defeat him. And then he ultimately doesn't even defeat him with a killing curse. He defeats him by disarming him. So we see that this is a kind of process of disarming the adversary by allowing the adversary to defeat the hero. Now, where do we get this? Where does this come from? Well, I would argue that this model of hero we get from a particular understanding of Christ's sacrifice on the cross. And especially given that it's the Easter season, I think this is very relevant, seeing Endgame come out now right around Easter, and seeing this model of heroism that took heart in the MCU. We see on this model the archetype of Christ. So God the Son comes and becomes a lowly human being like us, and he allows himself to be killed, to be defeated by death and the devil, and by doing so he defeats death. And it's only through not only self-sacrifice, but by allowing oneself to be thoroughly defeated that the entire universe is brought into the way it should be. So, why I point to this scene in Thor? Well, first of all, the parallels are obvious, and we see that it's a kind of a God becoming man, not only sacrificing himself, but sacrificing himself in this particular way in order to save those he cares about. We see a reconciliation with his father, with the All-Father, if we're talking about Odin. We even see after Thor lies on the ground, defeated, presumably, as far as he knows, dying, he tells his friends, "It's done. It's over." And that is just a slight translation difference away from Jesus' last words on the cross, "It is finished." So why I bring this up again is, now don't get me wrong, it's a good scene. It's well put together as far as I know. And I'm no expert on cinematography or even storytelling. But what interests me about this scene is that it set a trend. We don't see this kind of heroism in previous MCU movies up to this point, at least not in the same way. We don't see this in Iron Man, or Iron Man 2, or in The Incredible Hulk. But after this point, this becomes almost the default mode of heroism in the MCU. The clearest places we see this are in a couple of places throughout the rest of the MCU up until this point. Most obviously, we see this repeatedly in Captain America. In Steve Rogers, even before he was Captain America. We have that iconic line, "I can do this all day." What that shows is his way of defeating people, defeating his enemies, defeating bullies, is not by overcoming them by force of arms, overpowering them through some show of strength or heroism. And it's not even going out to confront the villain and dying in the process. It goes beyond that, to allowing the villain to defeat him, which lets him win. That's what allows him to win, and he does this repeatedly. Perhaps most iconically, in another scene that another video from this series has pointed out. For that, I'll point you to Brown Table's video on one of the ending scenes in Captain America Winter Soldier, where Steve Rogers is confronting Bucky Barnes, the titular Winter Soldier, his old friend, and after he's finished the task he needed to do, after he's ended the threat of the SHIELD / Hydra helicarriers, etc., the Winter Soldier still fights him. And then the conflict changes. And I'll let you go to his video for more on that. But we see this again where Steve Rogers doesn't defeat the Winter Soldier by beating him or even by fighting him, but by allowing himself to be defeated, to be beaten almost to death again. And that's how he turns things around. That's how he redeems his friend eventually, as we wind up seeing later. And again, we see this throughout Captain America's arc, and I would be surprised to not see something like that in Steve Rogers in the future, however long that future may be. Again, I haven't seen Endgame yet, so I don't know how long that future will be. Now, the other example that I want to point to, and this is where we find this culmination in Infinity War, is the character of Doctor Strange. Another perhaps unexpected character to see as a Christ figure. And we first see it in Doctor Strange's own movie. How he defeats Dormammu at the end is not by some feat of magic. It's not even by gathering the forces together to win. It's not through overpowering him. It's not through defeating his minions or anything like this, the kind of thing you would expect from a superhero. What we see instead is Doctor Strange confronting Dormammu and allowing Dormammu to kill him repeatedly, over and over and over, in what seems to be an endless, agonizing process. Doctor Strange allows himself to die. He allows the villain to win. But by doing so, he wins in the end. Again, it isn't just through self-sacrifice. It's not just that Doctor Strange is killed and allows himself to be killed and sacrifices himself for the greater victory. It's not just that. It's that the victory comes precisely through his allowing himself to be defeated and killed. And we see this again. Again, warning, spoilers for Infinity War if you haven't seen it. Now's your time to stop. Because we see this again coming from Doctor Strange in Infinity War. Because we have this implication that Doctor Strange has seen into the future and has seen all of these almost countless ways the Avengers will be defeated and will lose to Thanos. And it's important to note that he isn't asked, well, which one are we not defeated? Or which one don't we lose? It's, how many do we win? And he says, 1. Because it seems to me that when he looked into those futures, into all of those countless possible futures, he didn't see, well, he may not have seen any where they didn't lose. What he saw was one where they win. So what he does is he enacts that plan. He puts everyone on the path to that future, the future that would lead everyone to, presumably, victory in Endgame. But the path on the way there, the path on the way to victory, is not defeating Thanos, is not even coming together to stop him. It's not using everyone's skills and talents and abilities to defeat Thanos. It's not keep Peter Quill from punching him in the face repeatedly. It's none of this. All of that, every element of the conflict that ultimately led not only to Doctor Strange being defeated and killed, but to everyone being defeated and half the universe being killed. It's that path that Doctor Strange saw, that he sees as the only way of winning. The only way through to victory that we see here is through defeat. It's only through losing that we can ultimately win. It's only through weakness that we can become strong, right? All of these things that are so essential to our understanding of heroism and especially so essential to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. All of this started, well, in the MCU at least, with that one little scene from Thor. That one little bit where Thor, instead of becoming worthy and defeating the Destroyer, what he does is he shows himself to be worthy by allowing himself to be defeated and killed. He shows weakness. He is defeated so that he can win. And all of this traces back to the prototypical hero in our modern Western, I would say post-Christian culture, which is this idea of the victorious Christ, Christus Victor, the idea that God overcomes sin and death by dying and being defeated by sin. And that, I think, is one of the most unique things about the MCU and why it resonates, why all of these stories resonate so much with us. And this is what we see in these heroes that we might not see from other superheroes and other movies. It reaches in to the most fundamental depths of our shared mythology, and it puts it up in front of us in a flashy and spectacular way that we can not only enjoy, but we can relate to. We can see as real, fundamentally real. So I'm at least hoping that Endgame follows through on something like this, and we'll see. So by the time this video is up and posted, a lot of you will probably have seen Endgame. So I am going to request that you refrain from spoilers in the comments for at least a while, and I am going to be keeping pretty good track of that to make sure spoilers don't pop up in the comments of this video, at least as best I'm capable of doing. That said, feel free to discuss this, and I do think that this is one of the best elements of the MCU and one of the most fascinating things about this series that has captured our public imagination for now over a decade. So, with that, I will see you all next time. Bye.